I became involved with Buteyko like most people who teach Buteyko because my family had asthma, or asthma as you probably call it here. The asthma of, this is my son, when he was about 12, and he had started getting asthma. He was first diagnosed when he was 18 months old. He was put on Ventolin syrup when he had a cold. By the time he was 6 years old, he was prescribed steroids, you know, the inhaled steroids. And he was also taking Ventolin, an inhaler, you know, whenever he needed it, whenever he had a cold. By the time he was 12, he'd been in and out of hospital lots of times, and he had a particularly bad attack then and was put on a nebulizer, Ventolin, and also Atrovent if he got worse. So he was on a nebulizer at least 3 times a day, and then he started taking prednisone, oral steroids, at, you know, every 4 to 6 weeks. And he had been doing that for 2 years when I heard about the Buteyko method. My husband, he had been an asthmatic as a child, then it went away because they didn't really have drugs, they didn't use drugs so much in those days. And as you're going to see as we talk about this, how the drugs sort of perpetuate the problem. But he had had periods of asthma as a child and then a teenager, and when he was in his 20s he was hospitalised for 6 weeks for his back, but he had to lie on his back for 6 weeks. And they noticed that he was wheezing, started him on Ventolin, and by the time we heard about Buteyko, he was 40, and he also was using medication every day. We had tried all kinds of things to alleviate the problem. You know, we'd tried special diets. We eliminated all kinds of foods and things from our house. Other things too, like formaldehyde, you know, like chipboard. We went, according to the doctor who tested them for allergies, they were tested for 80-something things, and they reacted to 70-something. So we had no plastic, like no Tupperware in our house. Everything was stored in glass. We vacuumed the beds every day. We did all this sort of kind of crazy stuff. Even our doctor told us that we were living in the wrong suburb. So we sold our house and we moved out to the sea. It just meant we were another half an hour away from the children's hospital. So all of these things, they worked for a couple of weeks, but then, you know, the asthma would come back. So it was like the placebo effect. You know, they all worked a little bit, but the problem was still there. I saw a program on a current affair about the work that this man had been doing. There were people on the show who were saying that they attended a Buteyko course and their asthma went away. And they also had a respiratory specialist who said it couldn't possibly work. You know, how could changing your breathing improve your asthma? But these people were, you know, quite clear that it had worked for them. So I figured we had nothing to lose. By this stage, you know, we were down to eating about 10 foods and, you know, like living in a bubble. And it was really amazing. Russell and Robert went along to the course and their asthma went away, just like everybody, just like the TV said. It wasn't a magic cure. They had to work at the exercises, you know, like, so there are breathing exercises that you learn and special points to follow, strategies that you learn to help you deal with situations sometimes that are particularly bad. And, you know, so a whole range of things are taught in these classes. And then a few months after they had attended this course, the Russian man that had brought Buteyko out to Australia, called Sasha Stelmatsky, he wrote and asked if we would like to train. And, you know, this was had been the most amazing thing for us, so we decided to do that. And so we began to find out about this guy, and apparently he, as a trainee doctor, he had been sent as a project to study people's breathing, and he noticed that people who were dying or getting more and more ill, their breathing increased, so they breathed more and more, whereas the people who got well, they breathed less and less, and, you know, they got to go home. And apparently one night he was looking after this ward of people and he had a really bad headache. And he noticed that his breathing was very deep and noisy. And so he was just about reaching for an aspirin and he thought, uh-oh, I'll see what I can do. So he deliberately started to breathe more quietly and gently, and the headache went away. So then he increased his breathing, the headache came back. You know, he decreased it, the headache went away. So he played with this for a little while, and then a man woke up and said he needed a painkiller. And Dr. Buteyko said to the guy, breathe less. And to his complete amazement, the guy went back to sleep without the painkiller. And he was only 33, so he was like really, you know, young and excited and everything. So he went around and he woke up everyone in the ward, one after the other, and got them to breathe more and then breathe less. And all of them felt better when they breathed less than when they were breathing more air each minute. So he was so excited when he came off work that he went to the library, and he noticed, he started doing some research about the breathing, and he found that it's pretty easy to breathe too much air, more air than you need to, particularly if you follow these things. It's a subtle kind of thing. It's not like, you know, often we think of breathing too much, or we would think of hyperventilation as people panting. But how many people do you know who just sigh repeatedly or yawn a lot? You know, like it's very easy to do. What happens when you breathe too much air? You still get the right amount of oxygen, but you actually start to drop carbon dioxide. And most people think, well, that doesn't matter because carbon dioxide is a waste gas. Okay, well, you know, it's just rubbish that we breathe out. But it's like putting oil in your car. Okay, the oxygen's like putting the gas in your car, but carbon dioxide's like putting the oil in your car. It makes it run. How far can you go without oil?
Too much.
No, yeah, the motor will seize. Well, it's the same with us. We have to have carbon dioxide to regulate the body, to make it run smoothly. Another thing that he found out about was this thing called the Bohr effect. So a Danish scientist in the 1890s called Christian Bohr discovered that when you breathe too much, you can't get the oxygen out of the bloodstream into your tissue cells easily. And so that means that it's like running your car on 3 cylinders or something instead of 4. It's not working properly. And so really what this means is that the more you breathe, the more breathless you get. Who's noticed that? Has anyone noticed that? Like, you know, do you ever get asthma or breathless, breathing quietly through your nose? You usually get asthma when you start to, and the more you breathe, the worse it gets. And that's because of the Bohr effect. Okay, so when you breathe too much, you've still got the right amount of oxygen, but you can't use it because your carbon dioxide pressure starts to get low.